little bit. I don't expect a lot of people to be here today, as I think a lot of folks are taking time off for the holidays, but you are very important to us for being here. We will record this webinar and the slide deck will be sent out later on. Again, as I initially introduced myself, I am Lisa Ireland with the Student Information Department. Online with me today, not presenting, but managing all the important pieces is Leilani Tyler. And thank you for being with us today, Leilani. Appreciate your help. Darby Kaikkonen, the Director of Student Information, has asked me to present this information for her. And we will get going. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. We really would prefer that you use the Q&A to enter your questions, as it's just Leilani and I will have limited capacity to monitor the chat. If there are questions that come up during this presentation that we cannot speak to, we will capture those questions for later and ask the appropriate folks at OSPI to respond to those. And if appropriate, we'll save those for a Q&A for later on or an FAQ document. With that, I'm going to turn off my camera and we'll get started. If I can get my mouse to behave today. Okay, again, today is the CEDARS Statewide meeting for December 2023. Can't believe we're in the last month of 2023. Today, we're going to be speaking to Substitute Senate Bill 5593, titled Student Data Equity Implementation Update. What does that mean? We're going to get into that in just a moment. First, I'd like to do a tribal land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge the Indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and who still inhabit the area today. I am presenting to you from the land of the Indigenous people of the Squaxin tribe. You are welcome to put in the chat the lands that you are attending from today, but you're not required to do so. Our agenda today is to cover the legislation summary. We're going to speak to the two RCWs that have been developed as a result of the Substitute Senate bill, the implementation timeline and overview, implementation stage 2. This is going to be rolled out in a couple stages, those requirements and details. And then we'll have questions and answers if you have any, and we will be providing contact information at the end. So first, let's start with the legislation summary for Substitute Senate Bill 5593. So legislation summary is an act relating to improving equity in the transfer of student data between public K-12 schools and institutions of higher education. I'm going to pause real quick. The institutions of higher education are those that are within Washington State and might be universities, community colleges, technical colleges. The result of the legislation summary or action resulted in 2 new sections in RCW 28B and 28A, and we'll be touching on those as we go through the meeting. The intent of this legislation is to gather high school student, and we'll speak to what that means, and their parent or guardian's directory or contact information. And through OSPI, so OSPI is tasked with this, and through OSPI, the participating higher education institutions can access the data for the purpose of sharing post-secondary educational opportunities in Washington. There's a lot of print on this slide. This is the RCW that was developed as a result of this Substitute Senate bill. It's RCW 28A 150515. I'm going to do a quick high-level summary of what's presented on this page. Again, this will be sent out. You can read this if you have a desire to, or share it with others in your district. So this RCW states that beginning by November 1st of 2024, so the next school year, that every school district or LEA that operates a high school shall annually transmit directory information for students enrolled in high schools to OSPI. OSPI must store and maintain this data. That FERPA rules must be followed, meaning we are going to securely get this data from you and store it in a secure manner, so we are not in violation of the release or of any student data. And families and students can opt out of sharing part or all of this information. For the purpose of this data collection, directory information means names, addresses, email addresses, and phone numbers of students and their parent or guardian. And it also speaks to the statewide student identifier, which we all know and love as the SSID. There's a second RCW listed here, 28B 10041. This speaks to the data sharing agreements that institutions of higher education must enter into with OSPI in order to access this information. So, and it reads exactly what it says. We are currently working on developing a data sharing agreement, and the institutions of higher education by next fall must have entered into a data sharing agreement, or DSA, with OSPI in order to securely access this information. And again, this provides a few more details in here. We have let me look at the Q&A real quick. Tracy, I do not know if this is related in any way to the WA-GAP initiative, but we can capture your question and try and speak to it later. And what the higher education institution will get from us is the SSID of the student, the district that submitted their data, and the directory information that we spoke about just a moment ago. And again, I'm trying hard not to go too into the weeds. I don't want to do death by PowerPoint by reading. I just want to do a summary, a high-level summary of what's shared on a few of these slides. So we have some implementation stages and timelines. Stage 1 is OSPI establishes a data sharing agreement with the institutions of higher education during fiscal year 2024. Again, we are working on creating those data sharing agreements and reaching out to those institutions of higher education, again, which would be universities, community colleges, technical colleges in Washington State. By November 1st, 2024, school districts, or LEAs, will transmit directory data to OSPI. And let me take a step back here for folks to say, synonymously, we will use school district, district, or LEA, which is local education agency. Those cover all of the entities acting as a district or LEA in Washington, and that would be what we know as a regular high school, charter school districts, STECs, which is our state tribal education compacts, and some ESDs operating as a school district. Data will be required from all of these LEAs. OSPI then, once the data is collected, we don't have a specific date assigned to that yet, will make the directory data available, again, in a secure manner to those higher ed institutes that have a data sharing agreement. And then further down the road, and this we believe this will be a couple years down the road, the higher education institutions will transmit enrollment and outcome information to OSPI. And the last stage is we're going to develop a process to transmit that information back to the school districts that wish to access this data. So we're going to break out stage 1 a little bit for you. The data sharing agreements are established. We are currently working with our stakeholders, which is institutes of higher education, State Board for Community and Technical Colleges, federally designated minority serving institutions, and OSPI. Our deliverable is the data sharing agreements that facilitate the transfer of student directory information. So currently what we're doing is we're working with our technical partners in IT to develop a data collection system or upload process. We think it's going to be fairly simple. probably won't contain more than 10 to 15 variables, and very simple, and it will live outside of CEDARS. We are not going to embed this information in CEDARS. So they are working right now to develop that tool to do that data upload, and we will communicate additional information about that to you in the near future. So the higher ed, once they enter the data sharing agreement, we'll document all that. That information should be available. School districts will review the current collection and FERPA and student privacy disclosures and procedures, and then we'll move forward with that collection. And again, this stage right here just identifies the requirements, the rules that lead to that, and provides definitions. And in stage 2, school districts that operate a high school, in this case, for purposes of this collection, it's all students in grades 9 through 12, even if your 9th graders are in a middle or junior high. You'll have the high school student directory information that you've collected. You'll have identified families that opt out, students or families that opt out. And beginning next fall, by November 1st of each year, upload. It's a one and done each school year. Again, under the rules, the procedures are listed under the RCW. We're following the FERPA and Privacy Rights Act to ensure student privacy is managed. And there's more directory information. We keep defining that directory information because there's been a lot of questions about that, and we're following what's designed in the RCW. So what are the requirements? So again, we've been working with our stakeholders. There's a section from this RCW that says each school district that operates a high school shall annually transmit the directory information for all enrolled high schools to OSPI. Again, what's not in here, but is going to be able, is if you have families that opt out of all or part of that information, you are not required to upload that. They do have that opt out. Now, districts as a whole can't opt out. It's individual by student or family. So we have some definitions of directory information, again, names, addresses, email addresses, and phone numbers of both students and their parent or guardian. And this is where it's fairly unique. We're going to have columns to capture or elements to capture both student and family contact information. School district that operates a high school. Again, any school district or LEA with students in grades 9 through 12 in any school. There was a lot of discussion about this as the legislation says high school, but we had to go back and determine that they meant, the assumption really was all high schools have 9 through 12, and we know that's not true. So that's why we keep bringing up the grades 9 through 12. So here's a snapshot of the data elements we believe will be transmitted to OSPI. It's a very short list. We know some of you are going, it might be short, but it might be interesting to get all of this information. Data you already have at hand. When we say district organization ID or school organization ID, we mean the 5-digit district or LEA code assigned to you and the 4-digit school code. Internally, in our IT folks, they use the term organization ID. The school year that you're transmitting data for, next year it'll be 2024-25. We'll let you know how to format that, the SSID, and then it lists the additional pieces of information that'll be included. So prior to transmitting that information, districts will remove any record who's opted out of the collection. This has been under discussion for us, and we have come to the conclusion for ease of submitting the data, not having to tell us an SSID opted out, that can get difficult. We will assume when you've uploaded the file that it contains the information for all students who have not opted out, and if the students are missing, that is intentional. Okay, we have a Q&A. It should be the legal name, and that's a great question. At this point in time, our information or understanding is that it is the student's legal name. And when we finish developing that template, and we will have something similar to the CEDARS data manual, but much smaller. Each element will have a description, type, size, valid value limitations, and also instructions as to whether it's the legal or preferred name. And we will make sure that that is very specifically drawn out. But that is a great question. So OSPI will validate the SSID before moving data to staging for sharing. No values will be in the directory will be accepted. And what that would mean is you'll send us the SSID, the district and school codes. And for example, if you were provided everything but a phone number for a student or family member, you'll have all but one field populated. Again, the assumption is if you upload a file and it has a blank element or field, I think we're both, those are synonymous with each other right now. We will assume the family either did not provide that or they opted out of sharing that information. So there's data use and information for consent procedures and annual notification. The following information, I'm not going to read it verbatim, you can all do that, was provided from the public four-year sector in support of the data use statement school districts will share with parents or guardians. So this is some helpful information that might assist you in reaching out and collecting that data. And this was provided by the Council of Presidents in October of this year. Not going to be this year much longer though, is it? And again, it speaks to the intent of this intent and use of this data collection. So Tracy, that's another question we have had is, for example, if there are 3 parents or guardians that attached to a student, we would want an individual row for each one. Now, is there a limitation? Because we understand family dynamics can be different. It can be 1 parent or guardian, it could be 3. And we will provide those instructions. That way you don't have to make the determination when creating that file as to which one to pull. So for example, if you had Lisa Ireland in grade 11 in your school, and I had 3 parents or guardians listed, you would just submit 3 rows. So you'd repeat my information 3 times and provide the unique parent or guardian information. And it'll be up to the higher education folks to manage that data. We've also had a question about unaccompanied youth. We have a lot of students in Washington that are unaccompanied youth, or when they obtain age 18, they ask that they be identified as the parent or guardian. And if that information is in there, or you just have the student's information and no additional information, that simply would be blank. Or if in the case of a student that might be unaccompanied and you list them as both the student and the parent or guardian or emergency contact, that's the information that you would upload. It looked like we had another question. Okay, now we're good there. And I apologize, this is a very high level. We really wanted to start today with just alerting you to the fact that this collection will be mandated. We are working to make it as simple as possible. And I step back and say that when we say simple, we know this isn't super easy. We're trying to get the template out to you early enough for design and for use when you begin collecting data for next school year or adding different pieces for verification of enrollment information. So that brings us to our next steps. We are working on a bulletin. We're working with our data governance office right now. They are creating a bulletin with specific requirements that will be sent out, I believe, in the next few weeks. The data collection details to include the tool, identifying how we're going to do it, the steps, the process that will be done, and again, a user guide or a file specification user guide we are going to do our best to have that available to you in a minimum 6 months before November 1st. It should be much sooner than that. And they should all be able to come in. Leilani, can you check to see if there's...
Yeah, I'll check really quick, Lisa. Hold on just a
Thank you.
second.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, once the webinar started, people should be able to automatically flow in. So we'll just take a moment and see if there's some additional people that are going to join us. And while we're waiting to see if we have some other folks that are going to come in, we have to thank our stakeholders. The stakeholder group in Washington is comprised of members of OSPI and our valuable partners in the ESD vendor support teams, the SIS vendors, and a good number of the school districts in Washington that step up to the plate. They represent all of the SIS systems in use, small, medium, and large districts, and those in both Eastern and Western Washington. They have been great partners, thought partners with us in developing this information. So let me just check real quick. So it looks like somebody might be using the incorrect webinar link. And if anybody's getting contacted by this, folks. Yes, and thank you. So while we're waiting to try this, juvenile detention centers, it'll be the School of Primary Enrollment. So Julie, and we will provide additional input on that. So for example, we would not expect skill centers to be uploading this information because students in skill centers should always be primary no. But we will ask for sure and verify if students enrolled in juvenile detention centers, we know those are primarily very short-term stays. So we will we'll verify that. Okay. And Janet, I did see that, yeah, the PowerPoint, and I believe Leilani answered you, will be mailed out or email. We're not going to mail it. We're not going to old school mail it to you. I remember those days. And the webinar is also being recorded. And when we have the opportunity, we will ADA that the webinar. It's a big process for those that don't know about this, and I'll get back on here and see if we have some folks in. To post the recorded webinar, we first have to go through the transcript. And when it records this, it's always very interesting when you think you speak clearly and slowly, how it reads what you're saying. So Leilani has to go through and make sure that the transcript reads as it's supposed to, and she ADAs the webinar. So hopefully within the next 2 or 3 weeks, it'll be online, and we'll post a notice to the field when it is. Yes, Terry, that's a good question. So again, all of the public schools with students in grades 9 through 12, but that is a great question. We'll capture that. We understand that contact information for those students in that case might be opted out, but thank you for raising that question. We will include that in our technical guide. And Leilani, if you can make sure we capture that question about the open doors that's in the adult jail. They do some great stuff. I believe that's at Coyote Ridge. They're reaching some students, and also juvenile detention centers. So we will make sure and get that information. Since I appreciate you ask all these questions, it helps us put some more thought to these pieces. And this is why we wanted to have this webinar today. Okay. Great. Any more? No, we got more questions there. Okay. So again, for those folks that may have signed in just a couple minutes ago, we're talking about a new data collection that there's a substitute Senate bill is mandated be done. It's OSPI is required to collect directory information from all school districts or LEAs. Those are synonymous with each other. For all students in grades 9 through 12. We've gotten some great questions about, does that include students in skill centers or juvenile detention, or potentially students who might be being served educational opportunities in adult jails. We will make sure and clarify that and include that information in our guidance. We did cover the RCWs that cover the requirements for OSPI. The Institutes of Higher Education, let me take a step back. We're required to collect the directory information. It'll be done in a secure manner outside of CEDARS. It'll be uploaded through the core FTP, and institutions of higher education in Washington State, universities, community colleges, technical colleges, if they enter into a data sharing agreement with OSPI, will be allowed to securely access this data. And the intent and purpose of this collection is for these institutions to be able to reach out to students and their families to provide information about educational opportunities. I'm going to pause and take a quick sip of water, and we'll go to the next one. So really where we're at is questions and answers. It's a very brief PowerPoint today and presentation. We do not, and I will go back again for the folks that might be fairly new. The collection will be small in size. We're not sure the lift it will take. And again, families have a right to opt out of all or part of providing this data to OSPI. And what we have heard from the majority of our stakeholders and vendors is that in their student information systems, families have the ability to indicate whether they want to opt out on this information being shared. So that's the summary. Again, we just want to give you a heads up. It'll be coming next November. A bulletin will be coming soon. And shortly after that, a technical guide or technical document detailing specifications for the emails. We did get the question about, is this the student's legal name or preferred name? Or if we need both, we will take that question to the individuals managing this collection and hopefully have that information back to you. And again, we'll take all these questions and probably develop some sort of FAQ to include with our communications. We're not really calling it, well, it's the student directory data collection. I don't know that we actually have a formalized name for this. Yes, and that's a good question. Tim, you asked, considering it's an RCW, we're all LEAs. And as we talked about at first, when we speak to LEAs in Washington, local education agencies, that covers all entities operating as a public school in Washington. That includes our regular school districts, as we've always known them, charter school districts, STECs, which is the State Tribal Education Compact, and those ESDs operating public schools in Washington. And this only affects students in grades 9 through 12. And again, in the guidance we develop, we'll speak to, if it's only primary, yes, or if it's kids, it's primary, no, if homeschool and private school students should be included or not. We'll provide all of that information. We're still teasing those details out. And currently it's, again, Julie, it's just the directory data collection, nothing fancy yet. We'll probably put a formal name to it fairly soon. Okay, and great. And Leilani indicated that Leilani is appearing as OSPI customer support. So if you see comments or questions on there, that's where that's coming from. And indicated that unanswered questions from today's session will be provided as an FAQ in the near future. We appreciate your patience as we work through these details. Over the last couple months, we've really, again, been working with our stakeholders to tease out these different pieces, to reach out to the folks that are mandating this collection to get that specificity for grade levels, and working with our IT department to create the easiest manner in which to capture this information. And again, for those folks that are late, this will be a once a year requirement beginning November 1st of 2024. And if you miss that, if a student's an unaccompanied youth, we understand, or for example, might be 18, which would also be unaccompanied youth, and asks for their parent or guardian to be removed, you would not submit that data to us. And again, we'll provide that in our FAQ or the guidelines that come with the technical support documents. So with that, again, we knew this would be a fairly quick webinar, just giving you a heads up about what's coming down the pike. Again, your student information system or SIS vendors are aware of this. We have heard that the majority, if not all districts, collect all of, well, I shouldn't say all this information. We have heard that there might be a few that don't, but we wanted to give you a heads up to start your planning. We understand you're creating your registration forms and data verification forms for next year at this time, and felt this was a timely item to bring to the table right now. And again, knowing there's a lot of folks that can't be with us today because they're starting their holiday break, we will be posting this online soon and be sending a copy of this out to folks that are participating today or who registered. So do we have any other questions? I'm going to put my the contact information. It's a little bit different. Normally you have the, Ask SI email. I just noticed we do have a typo in that. That's embarrassing. Please direct any, it should be questions, not questions to the contact information below. The student information at k12.wa.us. Those questions will be filtered and will go to either our IT technical folks if it's a technical question, or we'll go to Darby Kakenon or myself if appropriate for CEDARS or data type questions. Okay, do we have any other questions? I'm going to pause. We'll wait around for about 30 seconds. And if there aren't any questions, we will go ahead and end the webinar. We appreciate your participation today and wish you all happy holidays. Thank you, Carrie, for that comment. We're really hoping once we get the bulletin out, again, our data governance person and Darby are working on that bulletin to provide as much information as possible. This document, the PowerPoint here, will contain the RCWs and the substitute Senate bill. And we are hoping the effort involved in this will be minimal for all of you. Okay, and thanks, Terry. Happy holidays to you. In that, if we don't have anything else. Oh, okay. Okay, Amanda, this webinar was not about the restraint isolation data. It's about this directory data we're going to be collecting beginning next fall. If you'd like to reach out to me, I will give you my email address and you can connect with me. We can chat because again, today's webinar is about the directory data collection that will be coming. I will pop my email in the chat. There you are. With that, I think we can stop our recording. We will call our webinar covered for the day.